The asteroid field had become a graveyard of twisted metal and burning wreckage. Dozens of Krellian warships floated dead in space, their hulls torn open by the massive explosions that had caught them completely by surprise. But General Vextar still commanded over 200 surviving vessels, and his rage at being outmaneuvered by primitive humans had turned into a cold, deadly fury. All ships concentrate fire on the human command vessel, he snarled from his flagship bridge, his yellow eyes blazed with hatred as he watched the smaller human ships darting between his massive warships like insects. I want every weapon focused on destroying that arrogant female who dares to challenge the might of the Empire. The surviving Krellian ships began to regroup, their formation changing from the tight attack pattern they had used before to a more spread-out defensive arrangement. Their energy weapons swiveled toward General Hana's flagship, sending streams of deadly fire through the debris filled space. But Hana had spent months studying Krellian battle tactics, and she knew exactly how they would respond to her trap. The alien commanders were predictable in their arrogance, always believing that superior firepower could solve any problem. They had not yet realized that this battle was being fought according to rules they did not understand. Captain Park, execute evasive pattern 7. She ordered calmly as energy beams flashed past her command ship. All fighters move to intercept formation and prepare for Phase 2 of the operation. Commander Yoon Se-woo's fighter squadrons swarmed around the larger ships like protective wolves guarding their pack. The human pilots pushed their small craft to the limits of speed and maneuverability, using every asteroid and piece of debris as cover from the devastating alien weapons. The Krellian ships were powerful, but they were also massive and slow to change direction. Their weapons were designed to destroy large targets, not to track the lightning. Fast human fighters that seemed to appear from nowhere fire their missiles and vanish again into the chaos of the battle. Sir Lieutenant Choi Yuna called from her station. Enemy formation is shifting exactly as predicted. They are moving into the convergence zone. All ships are maintaining the calculated pursuit pattern. Hana nodded with satisfaction. The Krellians were doing exactly what she had hoped they would do. Their superior numbers and firepower made them confident that they could overwhelm the human fleet through sheer force, but they did not understand that they were being herded like animals into a slaughter. The human ships began what appeared to be a desperate retreat, falling back toward the outer edge of the asteroid field. The Krellian commanders, seeing their enemies apparently fleeing in panic, ordered their vessels to pursue and finish the destruction of the pathetic human resistance. General Vextar watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction as his ships closed in on the retreating humans. Soon he would have his revenge on the female commander who had dared to strike back at the Empire. Her death would be slow and painful, serving as an example to any other species that might consider rebellion. But deep within the human flagship, Dr. On Soo-young worked frantically at a device that represented years of secret research and development. The quantum resonance array was part human engineering and part technology reverse engineered from captured Krellian equipment, creating a hybrid weapon that should not have been possible. The device looked like a collection of crystal formations, surrounded by complex electronic equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. Dr. Soo-young had spent her entire career studying alien technology, but never had she attempted anything as dangerous as this experiment. General, the resonance field is building toward critical levels, she reported to Hana over the internal communication system. But I must warn you, the power requirements are enormous. We will have to drain energy from life support, environmental controls, and artificial gravity to make this work do it. Hana ordered without hesitation, whatever it takes to complete the operation. Throughout, the human flagship lights dimmed to emergency levels as power was redirected to the quantum device. The familiar hum of life support systems fell silent and artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone feel slightly weightless. The crew worked by the glow of their instrument panels as the ship diverted every available unit of energy to Dr. Soo-young's weapon. Meanwhile, the battle continued to rage around them. Major Khan Junce's Marine Battalion had successfully boarded a damaged Krellian destroyer, fighting through its corridors with savage determination. The alien crew had never faced human soldiers in close combat, and they were learning that superior technology meant nothing when facing desperate warriors fighting for the survival of their species. The Krellian ship was a maze of strange architecture with corridors designed for creatures much larger than humans. But this actually worked in favor of the Marine Assault Team, who could move through smaller spaces and use their size advantage to outmaneuver the clumsy alien defenders. 30 seconds to optimal positioning, Captain Park announced from his station. The enemy fleet was now arranged in a perfect three-dimensional formation, exactly as Hana had predicted. Their ship's power cores were synchronized for maximum efficiency, creating a network of energy that connected every vessel in the fleet. This synchronization was what made Krellian fleets so effective in battle, allowing them to coordinate their attacks and share power between ships when needed, but it was also their greatest weakness because it meant that all their vessels were connected through quantum energy links that could be manipulated by the right kind of technology. General Vextar stood on his command bridge, watching his fleet close in for the final kill. The human ships appeared to be in full retreat, with several vessels showing signs of serious damage. It would be over soon, and he could begin the process of hunting down every remaining human colony in the galaxy. Sir, one of his subordinates called from a monitoring station. We are detecting an unusual energy buildup from the human command vessel. The readings are unlike anything in our database, probably some primitive weapon system. Vextar dismissed the report with a wave of his clawed hand. These creatures are desperate and will try anything to delay their inevitable destruction. Continue the attack and destroy them all. But in the depths of space, Dr. Su Yang's quantum resonance array had reached perfect synchronization with the Krellian power network. The device generated a field that was invisible to normal sensors, but it was spreading through the alien fleet like a computer virus, infecting every connected system. Field synchronization complete, Dr. Suyang announced, her voice tight with exhaustion from working under extreme conditions. General, whatever you are planning to do, it must be now. This device is going to overload and destroy itself in approximately 60 seconds. Hana stood before the final activation control, feeling the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. Around her, the bridge crew held their breath as they waited for her command. Everything humanity had worked for, everything they had sacrificed, came down to this single choice. The quantum field was ready to unleash destruction on a scale that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. But once activated, there would be no way to stop it or control its effects. The weapon would either save humanity or destroy them along with their enemies. For Earth, Hana whispered and pressed the control that would change the fate of two civilizations forever. The quantum resonance pulse erupted from the human flagship, like an invisible wave of destruction racing through space at the speed of light toward the unsuspecting Krellian fleet that had no idea what was about to hit them. Colonel Kim Minho ran through the corridors of the space station as fast as his legs could carry him. His breathing was heavy and sweat dripped from his forehead. As he reached the command center, the automatic doors slid open and he rushed inside, where General Lee Hana stood studying the tactical displays. General, the Krellian fleet is moving into attack formation, he announced between gasps for air. Our long-range sensors show exactly what we expected, 300 warships advancing in standard battle formation. They will reach our defensive perimeter in less than 4 hours. Hana nodded, calmly, though inside her mind was working faster than a computer calculating possibilities and probabilities. The human fleet consisted of only 60 ships, and most of them were older models that had been quickly upgraded with whatever weapons and armor they could find. It was like sending children with sticks to fight against armored giants. Sir, Lieutenant Choi Yuna called from her communication station. Admiral Kim Jin-soo on the flagship is requesting final battle orders. All ship commanders are awaiting your instructions. Tell the Admiral to maintain defensive positions around the asteroid field. Hana ordered, her voice steady and confident. And patch me through to Engineering Chief Seo Taeyeon immediately. I need to speak with him about our special modifications. The communication system crackled to life, and the gruff voice of Chief Taeyeon filled the command center. General, the modifications you requested have been completed, but I must warn you again, this plan is completely insane. We have never tested anything like this under real combat conditions. The risk of catastrophic failure is extremely high. Hana allowed herself a small smile as she remembered the alien general's mocking words about human primitive technology. Sometimes insane is exactly what we need. Chief, your people have done excellent work. Now make sure all systems are ready for activation on my signal. The massive Krellian fleet moved through space like a swarm of deadly insects. Their ships were sleek and powerful with energy weapons that could destroy a human vessel in seconds. General Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the pathetic human formation ahead with satisfaction. These foolish creatures had arranged their ships in a defensive line around an asteroid field as if chunks of rock could somehow protect them from the might of the Krellian Empire. It was almost insulting that they thought such basic tactics could delay their inevitable destruction. All ships prepare for final assault. Vextar commanded, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. Target the human command vessels first. I want their leaders to watch helplessly as their fleet burns around them. But what the alien commander did not know was that General Hanna had been preparing for this battle for weeks. The asteroid field was not a natural defensive barrier, it was the most elaborate trap ever conceived by human military minds. For 20 days and nights, human engineers had worked in secret inside the hollow asteroids. Each massive rock had been carefully excavated and filled with enough explosive material to destroy a battleship. The asteroids looked completely natural from the outside, but inside they were bombs waiting to explode. More importantly, each explosive device was connected to all the others through a network of quantum transmitters that could not be detected by enemy sensors. When Hanna gave the signal, every single asteroid would detonate at exactly the same moment, creating a chain reaction of destruction. The human ships positioned around the asteroid field were also part of the deception. Many of them were operating on minimal power with their energy signatures masked to look like they were damaged or disabled. Their crews waited in darkness and silence like hunters preparing to spring their trap. Captain Lee Hyun-woo sat in the command chair of his cruiser watching the alien fleet approach. His ship appeared to be drifting helplessly with major engine damage, but in reality every system was ready for combat. His crew had practiced this deception dozens of times until they could execute it perfectly. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, enemy fleet is entering the target zone. All ships are now within the blast radius. Hyun-woo nodded and opened a secure channel to the other human commanders. Hold positions, he transmitted using coded signals that the aliens could not intercept. Wait for the general's signal. No matter what happens, do not break cover until she gives the order. On her command ship, General Hanna watched the tactical display as red dots representing enemy vessels moved deeper into the asteroid field. The Krellian ships were advancing in perfect formation, their commanders confident that they faced only desperate human resistance. Captain Park Dae-ho stood beside her, monitoring the quantum transmitter network that connected all the hidden explosives. General, he reported quietly, all devices are showing green status. The detonation sequence is ready for activation. Hanna felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. The lives of every human in the fleet depended on the success of this plan. If it failed, there would be no second chance. The Krellian Empire would destroy Earth and every other human colony in the galaxy. Enemy fleet has reached optimal position, Lieutenant Yuna announced from her station. All major vessels are now within the primary blast zone. The alien ships continued their advance, completely unaware that they were flying into the most dangerous trap ever set by human forces. General Vextar stood on his flagship bridge, studying the weak human defensive line with contempt. Pathetic, he muttered to his subordinates. These creatures actually believe their scrap metal ships can stand against the power of the Empire. Begin primary bombardment. Destroy their command vessel first. But before the Krellian weapons could fire, General Hanna pressed the activation control on her command console. The quantum signal raced outward at the speed of light, reaching every hidden explosive device in the asteroid field. Simultaneously, the space around the alien fleet suddenly erupted in a chain of explosions that turned the darkness into blazing light. Massive asteroids that had looked harmless moments before became devastating bombs, releasing energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. The blast wave spread outward, destroying everything in its path. Dozens of Krellian ships vanished instantly as the coordinated explosions overwhelmed their shields and tore through their hulls. The carefully maintained formation dissolved into chaos as surviving vessels tried desperately to escape the inferno that had consumed their companions. What is this? Vextar roared as his flagship shook from the massive explosions all around them. Impossible, no primitive species could have planned such a sophisticated attack, but the asteroid explosions were only the first part of Hana's plan. As the alien fleet reeled from the devastating surprise attack, the human ships that had been playing dead suddenly roared to life. Their engines blazed with full power as they emerged from their hiding places among the debris. All ships execute attack pattern Delta. Hana commanded over the fleet communication network, target their engine cores and weapon systems, show them what human ingenuity can accomplish. Captain Hinwu lead the charge as his cruiser dove between the massive alien dreadnoughts like a shark attacking whales. His ship was tiny compared to the enemy vessels, but its speed and maneuverability made it almost impossible to target effectively. The human fighters followed close behind, swarming around the larger Krellian ships like angry insects. Their small size allowed them to slip through gaps in the enemy defensive fire, while their pilots used every trick they had learned to stay alive in the deadly battle. Commander Yun Siwu led his squadron of fighters in a daring attack run against a damaged alien battleship. His pilots flew with the desperation of people fighting for the survival of their entire species. Every shot had to count because there would be no reinforcements coming to help. Then General Vextar watched in disbelief as his mighty fleet suffered losses that should have been impossible. Human ships that had appeared helpless were now fighting with savage effectiveness, turning the battle into a nightmare of confusion and destruction. All vessels focus fire on the human command ship, he ordered, his voice filled with rage. I want that arrogant female brought to me in chains. She will pay for this treachery. With her life energy beams lanced through space toward Hana's flagship, but she had anticipated this response as well. Her ship began evasive maneuvers while the fighter squadrons moved to intercept the incoming fire. The battle was far from over, but humanity had struck the first devastating blow against an enemy that had thought them weak and primitive. The trap had been sprung, and General Vextar was beginning to learn that underestimating human determination was a fatal mistake. General Li Hana walked slowly through the long metal hallway of the space station. Her black military boots made small clicking sounds on the cold floor. The walls around her were covered with screens showing maps of distant star systems. Many of them were now colored red, which meant the alien enemy had taken control of those places. She was only 28 years old, but already wore the 3 silver stars of a general on her uniform. Most people thought she was too young for such an important job, but Hana had proven them wrong many times. She had won battles that everyone said were impossible to win. Her mind worked differently from other commanders. She could see patterns and solutions that others missed. The war room doors opened with a soft hissing sound as she approached. Captain Park Daeho was already inside waiting for her. He was her most trusted assistant and had been with her through many dangerous missions. His face looked worried today, more worried than usual. General, we have received word that the Krellian fleet commander wants to meet with you for peace talks, he said quietly, but his eyes showed he did not believe these talks would lead to anything good. Hana nodded and walked to the big table in the center of the room. Above it floated a 3-dimensional map made of blue light showing the positions of human and alien ships. The red dots representing enemy vessels far outnumbered the green dots of human forces. How many ships do they have now? She asked, though she already knew the answer would not be good. Over 300 warships. General, their technology is much more advanced than ours, and they have been winning every major battle for the past 6 months. Daeho replied, his voice heavy with the weight of bad news. Hana studied the map carefully. Her fingers moved through the light beams, tracing possible attack routes and defensive positions. She had been thinking about this problem for weeks, trying to find some weakness in the enemy forces, some way to turn the tide of this losing war. The Krellians were a race of large reptile-like creatures from a distant part of the galaxy. They had been conquering worlds for hundreds of years, building a massive empire through superior weapons and ruthless tactics. Their ships were bigger, faster, and more powerful than anything humans had ever built. What do we know about their commander? She asked. General Vextar commands their main fleet. He has never lost a battle in over 50 campaigns. His reputation for cruelty is known throughout the galaxy. He does not usually bother with peace talks. Daeho paused, looking uncomfortable. There are rumors that he enjoys humiliating his enemies before destroying them. Hana felt a cold feeling in her stomach but kept her expression calm. She had learned long ago that showing fear or doubt would only make her soldiers lose hope. Even when things looked hopeless, a good leader had to appear confident and in control. Send word that I will meet with him, she decided. We have nothing to lose by listening to what he has to say. An hour later, the war room had been prepared for the meeting. Human guards stood at attention along the walls, their weapons ready, but not openly threatening. The large table had been cleared and chairs arranged on both sides. Hana sat in the center position, wearing her best dress uniform with all her medals and ribbons displayed. The doors opened and General Vexstar entered the room, followed by 6 of his personal guards. The alien commander was even larger than Hana had expected, standing nearly 8 feet tall. His green scaly skin seemed to shimmer under the bright lights of the room. His yellow eyes looked around with obvious contempt, as if everything he saw was beneath his notice. His guards were smaller, but still impressive, wearing black armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons were unlike anything in the human arsenal, sleek energy rifles that hummed with barely contained power. Vexstar walked slowly to the table, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. He did not sit down, but loomed over the humans like a giant predator, studying its prey. His forked tongue flicked out occasionally, tasting the air. So you are the famous General Hana, he said in heavily accented English, his voice deep and rumbling. I have heard stories about your small victories against our outer patrols. Very amusing. Hana stood up slowly, maintaining eye contact with the alien commander. She had learned that showing respect to bullies only encouraged them to become worse. General Vexstar, she said calmly, I understand you wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict. The alien commander laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. Terms, he repeated mockingly. There are no terms, little human, only surrender. You will order all human forces to lay down their weapons and submit to the authority of the Krellian Empire, and if we refuse, Hana asked, though she already knew the answer, then your pathetic species will be wiped from existence. Vexstar leaned forward, bringing his massive head closer to hers. Your ships are weak, your weapons are primitive, and your soldiers die like insects when faced with real warriors. Hana felt anger building inside her, but forced herself to remain calm. Losing her temper would accomplish nothing except giving this creature the satisfaction of seeing her upset. Perhaps we should discuss specific details of this surrender, she suggested. What guarantees can you offer regarding the treatment of civilian populations? Vexstar straightened up, and his yellow eyes flashed with something that might have been amusement or might have been rage. Guarantees, he snarled. You dare to negotiate with me as if you have any power in this situation. The alien general suddenly moved with shocking speed for such a large creature. His clawed hand swept across the space between them and struck Hana across the face with tremendous force. The impact sent her stumbling backward, her cheek burning with pain as thin lines of blood appeared where his claws had scraped her skin. The sound of the slap echoed through the suddenly silent room. Every human in the chamber tensed and several hands moved toward weapons, but Vexstar's guards raised their energy rifles in response. The two groups faced each other across the room, balanced on the edge of violence. Hana slowly straightened up, touching her wounded cheek. Her fingers came away red with blood, but her eyes remained fixed on the alien commander. Something had changed in her expression, something cold and calculating that had not been there before. That is what I think of human negotiations, Vexstar said with satisfaction. Your pathetic fleet will be destroyed within hours, and your precious Earth will burn like all the other worlds that dared to oppose the Empire. He turned and walked toward the door, his guards following in formation. Before leaving, he looked back over his shoulder. I suggest you spend your remaining time preparing for death, little general. It will be more merciful than what awaits your people after I am finished with your military forces. The doors closed behind the aliens, leaving the humans alone in the war room. The silence stretched for long moments as everyone processed what had just happened. Captain Deho moved toward Hana, but she waved him away. General, are you injured? He asked with concern. Hana continued to stare at the closed doors, her hand still pressed against her bleeding cheek. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but filled with a deadly certainty that made everyone in the room pay attention. They have just made their greatest mistake, she said softly. Contact Engineering Chief SEO Taiyun and tell him to begin Project Retribution immediately. But General, that project was deemed too dangerous and unpredictable. Deho protested. Hannah turned to face her staff, and for the first time since the aliens had left she smiled. It was not a pleasant expression, sometimes dangerous. And unpredictable is exactly what we need, she replied. Begin preparations for full fleet deployment. I want every ship ready for combat within 6 hours. As her officers hurried to carry out her orders, Hannah remained standing by the table staring. At the holographic map, the red dots representing enemy ships seemed to pulse like drops of blood in the blue light. General Vexstar had wanted to humiliate her before destroying humanity. He had succeeded in the first part of his plan, but he had also awakened something in her that would soon prove to be his downfall. The alien commander had struck a human general and thought it showed his superior power. Instead, he had just signed the death warrant for his entire fleet. The quantum resonance pulse raced through space faster than any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. When it reached the first Krellian warship, something extraordinary happened. The pulse did not destroy the vessel with explosions or energy beams. Instead, it did something far more elegant and terrifying. The invisible wave penetrated the ship's hull and invaded its power core, creating a feedback loop that turned the vessel's own energy systems against it. The quantum field spread through the power network like a virus, infecting every connected system and causing catastrophic failures throughout. The ship captain, Tsar of the Krellian heavy cruiser, felt his ship shudder as systems began failing all around him. Warning lights flashed on every console, and the steady hum of the power core became an irregular stuttering sound that filled him with dread. What is happening? He demanded from his engineering officer, but before anyone could answer, the ship's own weapon systems turned inward and began firing into the hull. The energy cannons that had been designed to destroy enemy vessels were now carving through the cruiser's internal structure, while the shields that should have protected the ship collapsed completely. Power surged through circuits that could not handle the overload, causing explosions throughout the massive vessel. Is impossible, the engineering officer screamed as his console erupted in sparks. Our own systems are attacking us. The power core is feeding energy directly into the weapons array. Similar scenes of chaos and destruction were happening throughout the Krellian fleet as the quantum pulse spread from ship to ship through their synchronized power network. One by one, the mighty warships that had conquered dozens of worlds began tearing themselves apart from within. General Vexstar watched in horror from his flagship bridge as his fleet dissolved around him. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before were now drifting hulks or balls aflame. Their own technology had been turned against them by some kind of weapon that defied every law of physics. He understood. Impossible. He snarled his claws, digging deep grooves in his command chair. No primitive species could develop such advanced technology. This must be some kind of trick or illusion, but the destruction was all too real as vessel after vessel fell victim to the quantum plague that raced through their power grid faster than any captain could react. Even ships that tried to shut down their main systems found that the pulse had already infected their backup power sources on the human flagship. The crew erupted in cheers as they watched the alien armada destroy itself without firing a single additional shot. Their impossible plan had worked beyond their wildest dreams, turning the enemy's greatest strength into their most devastating weakness. But General Hannah remained focused on her tactical display, studying the results of their attack with the cold precision of a born strategist. The quantum pulse had been incredibly effective, but it had not achieved total victory. Dozens of Krellian ships remained operational, their captains having been quick enough to sever all connections to the main power grid. All ships pursue and destroy remaining enemy vessels, she ordered over the fleet communication network. Show no mercy to those who would enslave humanity. These aliens came here expecting an easy victory, but they found something they never anticipated. Human fleet, energized by their seemingly impossible victory, fell upon the surviving Krellians with fierce determination that surprised even their enemies. Captain Sun-Hee led her squadron in a devastating attack run against a crippled dreadnought. While her pilots fought with the fury of people defending their homeworld, the alien ship was massive and heavily armored, but its weapon systems had been damaged by the quantum pulse, and it could barely return fire as the human fighters swarmed around it like angry insects. Each pilot knew that this might be their only chance to strike back at the empire that had threatened to destroy everything they held Dear Major Shin-Dyun's commando team had seized control of another alien vessel. From within, using the chaos caused by the quantum pulse to board the ship and overwhelm its confused crew. The Krellian warriors were deadly in open battle, but they had never trained to fight enemies who appeared inside their own vessels. The corridors of the alien ship were filled with smoke and the sounds of combat as human soldiers fought their way toward the command center. Their weapons were less advanced than those of their enemies, but their determination and tactical training made up for the technological disadvantage, sir, one of the commandos called as they reached the bridge. We have secured the navigation computer and weapons control. The remaining crew has surrendered. Excellent. Major Shin replied, turn their own weapons against the other enemy ships and show them what it feels like to be betrayed by their own technology. But Hannah's attention was fixed on one ship in particular, the massive flagship where General Vextar continued to command the remnants of his fleet. The arrogant alien commander who had struck her in the war room was still alive, still fighting, and that was a situation she intended to correct. Personally set course for the Krellian command ship, she ordered her bridge crew and prepare boarding pods for immediate launch. I have unfinished business with their General. Captain Park looked at her with concern. General, boarding that ship would be extremely dangerous. Their security forces are still at full strength and Vextar will be expecting some kind of revenge attack. Hannah touched the fading mark on her cheek where the alien general's claws had cut her skin. The wound had mostly healed, but she would never forget the humiliation and the contempt in his yellow eyes when he had struck her. Danger is something we have learned to live with, Captain, she replied calmly. Besides, I made a promise to that creature, and I always keep my promises. Load the boarding pods with our best assault troops and prepare for close combat. The human assault pods were small, heavily armored vehicles designed to punch through enemy hull plating and deliver troops directly into hostile ships. They had been used successfully in several previous battles, but never against a vessel as large and well defended. As Vextar's flagship engineering chief Sao Taeyun supervised the loading of the pods with weapons and equipment while the assault teams checked their gear one final time. These soldiers were volunteers who knew they might not survive the mission, but they also knew that this could be their chance to strike a decisive blow against the enemy leadership. General Hannah suited up in combat armor and checked her pulse rifle with practiced efficiency. She had not led a boarding assault in over 2 years, but the skills of close-quarters combat never really faded for someone who had fought their way up through the ranks. Sergeant Lim Woo-bin approached her carrying additional ammunition and grenades. General, are you certain you want to lead this assault personally? You are too valuable to risk in direct combat. Hannah looked at the veteran soldier who had served with her through many dangerous missions. His scarred face showed the concern of someone who had seen too many good officers die in pointless, heroic gestures. Sometimes sergeant leadership means being willing to do what you ask others to do, she replied. Besides, this is personal between me and their general. He wanted to humiliate humanity, and instead he has learned what happens when you underestimate human determination. The boarding pods were loaded into their launch tubes while the human flagship maneuvered closer to the alien command vessel. Vextar's ship was still formidable despite the damage it had taken, and its defensive systems tracked the approaching human vessel with deadly intent. Final systems check complete, reported the launch officer. All pods are ready for immediate deployment on your command. General Hannah took her position in the lead pod, surrounded by 12 of the most experienced combat soldiers in the human fleet. Through the small viewport, she could see the scarred hull of the enemy flagship growing larger as they approached. This is for everyone who died defending human colonies, she said over the communication system, and for everyone who refused to surrender even when the odds seemed impossible. Launch all pods. The boarding pods shot out from the human ship like bullets fired from a giant gun, racing toward their target while enemy defensive fire tried to destroy them before they could reach the hull. But the pods were small and fast, and most of them managed to avoid the desperate attempts to stop them. Hannah felt the impact as her pod smashed through the outer armor of the alien ship, and the cutting tools began carving an entrance into the vessel's interior. In moments, she would be face to face with the creatures who had threatened to destroy her. People, it was time to show General Vextar what happened when someone made the mistake of hitting a human general. The human boarding pods punched through the armored hull of General Vextar's flagship like bullets through paper. The cutting tools carved perfect circles in the alien metal before explosive charges blew the sections inward, creating entrance points. For the assault teams, Hannah was the first to emerge from her pod, rolling into the alien corridor with her pulse rifle ready. The interior of the Krellian ship was dimly lit by red emergency lighting and filled with the acrid smell of burning electronics. The quantum pulse had damaged many of the vessel's systems, leaving sparking cables hanging from the ceiling behind her. Sergeant Lim Wubin and his Marines moved with deadly precision, their weapons sweeping the area for any sign of enemy resistance. The corridor was wider than those found on human ships, built to accommodate the large reptilian bodies of the Krellian crew. Movement to the left. One of the Marines whispered into his communication headset, 3 enemy soldiers approaching from the junction ahead. Hannah pressed herself against the wall and signaled for her team to take cover. The Krellian defenders appeared moments later, their energy weapons glowing in the darkness as they searched for the human intruders. The firefight was brief but intense. Energy beams flashed through the corridor while the humans returned fire with their projectile weapons. The alien soldiers were larger and stronger, but they had never fought enemies inside their own ship and the confined space. Worked against them, 2 Krellians fell to concentrated human fire, while the third retreated deeper into the ship, calling for reinforcements in his harsh alien language. The Marines quickly stripped the bodies of weapons and ammunition, adding the advanced energy rifles to their arsenal. Move fast, Hannah ordered as they advanced through the twisting corridors. They know we are here and will try to trap us in these passages. The Krellian ship was a maze of interconnected levels connected by ramps. Instead of stairs, the walls were covered with strange symbols and patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. The air was thick and humid, designed for creatures from a much different world than Earth as they fought their way deeper into the ship. The resistance became stronger. Krellian security forces had established defensive positions at key choke points, forcing the humans to use grenades and tactical explosives to clear their path. Major Kang Junsu led another assault team that had boarded through a different section of the hull. His Marines were fighting their way toward the engine room, hoping to disable the ship's power systems and prevent it from escaping. The alien defenders fought with desperate courage, knowing that their ship and their lives depended on stopping the human boarders, but they were unprepared for the ferocity and determination of soldiers fighting for the survival of their entire species. Hannah and her team reached a major intersection where 5 corridors met in a large circular chamber. The walls were decorated with battle honors and victory trophies, taken from conquered worlds, including several items that had obviously come from human colonies there. Sergeant Wubin pointed to a section of the wall where human military insignia were displayed like hunting trophies. Those belonged to the defenders of New Seoul Colony. Hannah felt cold anger wash over her as she recognized medals and rank insignia from soldiers who had died defending their homes against Krellian attacks. The aliens had turned the symbols of human courage into decorations for their warship. They will pay for every life they took, she said quietly as they moved toward the command section of the ship. The final approach to the bridge was heavily defended with automatic weapon systems and energy barriers that blocked the corridor. Advanced Krellian soldiers in powered armor waited behind reinforced positions, their weapons trained on the only route the humans could take. We need a distraction, Sergeant Wubin observed, studying the enemy positions. There is no way to advance through that kind of firepower. Hannah studied the tactical situation for several moments before making her decision. Take 3 men and circle around through the maintenance passages, she ordered, when you hear my signal attack from behind their positions. But General, that will leave you with only half the team to make a frontal assault, one of the Marines protested. Sometimes the direct approach is the most effective, she replied as she checked her weapons and equipment. Besides, I have something they do not expect. The maintenance passages were narrow tubes designed for automated repair systems rather than living creatures. The Marines had to crawl through the confined spaces, dragging their weapons behind them while the sounds of battle echoed through the ship. Around them, meanwhile, Hannah led the remaining soldiers in a carefully planned assault on the bridge defenses. The Krellian Troops were experienced warriors, but they had positioned themselves to repel a conventional attack and were not prepared for the innovative tactics that human soldiers had. Developed using shaped charges and smoke grenades, the assault team created chaos in the enemy positions while Hannah used her knowledge of alien psychology to predict how the defenders would react. The Krellians were proud warriors who valued individual combat over teamwork, and this made them vulnerable to coordinated human tactics. The attack succeeded when Sergeant Wubin and his men struck from behind just as Hannah had planned. The alien defenders found themselves caught between two groups of human soldiers, and their defensive positions became death traps within minutes. The final barrier between the assault team and the bridge had been eliminated. The heavy doors that protected the command center were sealed and locked, but human engineers had learned how to override Krellian security systems from captured ships. The doors opened with a grinding sound of damaged mechanisms, revealing the bridge where General Vextar waited with his most loyal guards. The alien commander stood in the center of the circular chamber, his yellow eyes blazing with hatred and fury. "So you have come for your revenge, little human," he snarled as Hannah and her soldiers entered the bridge. His reptilian features were twisted with rage, but there was also fear in his voice as he realized that his mighty fleet had been destroyed by the species he had dismissed as primitive. "You thought you could humiliate humanity and walk away," Hannah replied calmly as she advanced through the wreckage of damaged control stations. "You were wrong about us in every possible way." The alien general was surrounded by 6 of his personal guards, but several of them were wounded from the quantum pulse that had damaged their equipment. The bridge itself showed signs of the catastrophic system failures that had crippled the ship. "Your tricks will not save your pathetic species," Vextar said with desperate bravado. "Other fleets will come to avenge this defeat, and your world will burn as payment for your insolence." Hannah raised her pulse rifle and aimed it directly at the alien general's chest. "You are right that other fleets will come," she said quietly, "but when they arrive, they will find something waiting for them that they never expected." "What is that?" Vextar demanded, though he already seemed to know that the answer would seal his fate. "They will find humans who are no longer afraid," she replied and pulled the trigger. The pulse rifle discharged with a bright flash of light that illuminated the entire bridge. General Vextar, the conqueror of worlds, fell among the ruins of his command center. His reign of terror finally ended by the species he had tried to destroy around the bridge. The remaining Krellian guards threw down their weapons in surrender. Recognizing that their cause was lost, the human soldiers quickly secured the area while damage control teams began assessing what could be salvaged from the alien technology. General Hannah stood among the wreckage, looking at the body of the creature who had slapped her and threatened to destroy humanity. He had been so confident in his superior strength and advanced weapons, but he had never understood the power of human determination and ingenuity. Captain Park Daeho contacted her through the communication system. "General, the remaining enemy ships are requesting terms for surrender. Admiral Jinsu reports that we have achieved complete victory. Accept their surrender," she replied, "but make it clear that any ship attempting to escape will be destroyed. We cannot allow word of our new weapons to reach the Krellian Empire before we are ready for their response." As rescue ships arrived to collect survivors and salvage the remains of the alien fleet, Hannah realized that this victory was only the beginning. The galaxy would never again see humanity as a weak and primitive species. The real war was just starting, and this time humans would not be fighting for survival, they would be fighting for conquest. The bridge of General Vextar's flagship had become a tomb filled with the bodies of alien warriors who had once thought themselves invincible. Sparking control panels cast eerie shadows on the walls, while the smell of burned electronics mixed with the acrid scent of discharged energy weapons. General Hannah stood over the fallen body of her enemy, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. The creature who had humiliated her was dead, but the victory felt hollow because it represented only a small fraction of the justice that humanity deserves. Sergeant Lim Wubin approached carrying a datapad with casualty reports. "General, we have secured the entire ship and taken 43 prisoners. The alien crew has surrendered completely and is requesting medical assistance for their wounded. Provide medical care according to the rules of war," she ordered, though her voice was cold as ice. "These creatures showed no mercy to human civilians, but we will not sink to their level." The rest of The human assault team was busy collecting intelligence from the alien computers and communication systems, every piece of information they could gather about Krelian. Military capabilities would be vital for the battles that were certain to come, Captain. Park Daeho's voice crackled through her communication headset. General Admiral, Jinsu reports that all remaining enemy vessels have either surrendered or been destroyed. We have achieved total victory with minimal losses to our own forces. Hannah felt a moment of relief wash over her, but she knew that this battle was only the beginning. The Krelian Empire stretched across dozens of star systems and commanded thousands of warships. This fleet had been large and powerful, but it was only a small part of their total military might. Tell the Admiral to begin salvage operations immediately, she ordered. We need to strip these ships of every useful piece of technology and equipment. The Empire will send another fleet eventually, and we must be ready for them. As she spoke these words, Hannah walked to one of the remaining functional viewports and looked out at the brief field that had once been the most powerful alien armada ever assembled. Twisted metal and burning wreckage stretched as far as the eye could see, proof of what human determination could accomplish when pushed to its limits. Hours later, the human fleet had regrouped around the command station that served as their base of operations. Salvage teams worked around the clock to recover alien technology, while engineers studied captured weapons and defensive systems. The quantum resonance weapon had exceeded all expectations, but Hannah knew they would need every advantage they could get. Dr. on Suyang met with her in the main conference room, carrying datapads filled with analysis of the battle results. The brilliant physicist looked exhausted from the strain of operating her experimental device, but her eyes shone with excitement. General, the quantum resonance array performed even better than our most optimistic projections, she reported. The feedback loop we created in their power grid was completely unprecedented in galactic warfare. We have essentially developed a weapon that turns enemy technology against itself. How long before we can build more of these devices? Hannah asked as she studied the technical specifications. With the resources we captured from their fleet, perhaps 6 months to construct a second unit, Dr. Suyang replied. But General, there is something else you need to know about the long-term implications of what we have done. Hannah looked up from the datapad, sensing that the physicist was about to share something significant. What do you mean? The quantum resonance technology is not just a weapon, she explained. It represents a fundamental breakthrough in our understanding of how energy and matter interact at the subatomic level. This discovery will revolutionize every aspect of human technology, from starship propulsion to planetary defense systems. Captain Park entered the conference room, carrying urgent communications from Earth Command. General, he announced, we have received orders from the Defense Council. You are to return to Earth immediately for debriefing and strategic planning. Hannah nodded, understanding that her superiors would want a complete report on the new weapon and its implications for future military operations. But she also knew that the politicians and bureaucrats back home did not truly understand what had changed in this battle. Prepare the fleet for departure, she ordered, but send a message to Earth Command informing them that we will be